Instead, Blaine, what are your thoughts on Prey 2006 and Prey 2017?
I'm not going to let them think that you sprung this on me, because you did specifically say, hey, so we're talking about this and rehashing this argument again, right?
Yeah.
On Sunday. But, okay, so I'm going to educate the viewers and listeners for a second. So I brought this up in, I believe, the SDGC Discord and on Twitter. And Jose and I kind of not fundamentally disagree. We agree on pretty much everything. It's like we usually do in these situations, but we disagree on one specific facet of the argument. I personally believe that Prey 2017, while a very strong game, I think ultimately fails to reach any potential it could have because of the fact that it has to live in the shadow of Prey 2006. That because of the fact that it's going to be compared to that you essentially have what was a very not a basic narrative, it was an interesting narrative that was kind of a basic action game, but with very good mechanics, and also had a story that revolved around a Native American main character, and his ethnicity, Tommy, was woven into like the very foundation of what made that narrative interesting. It wasn't just like, well, he happens to be Native American. In Prey 2017, the ethnicity of Morgan Yu and his brother, whose name I forget, were
Alex, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Morgan and Alex's ethnicity, while were never really brought up as anything other than kind of like, well, yeah, they just happen to be Asian. There's some design aesthetics, like I think for Alex's home in the space station, and just maybe a note here or there. And not saying that you have to, do the whole like, well, you have to make every single thing reflective of a character's ethnicity, but it makes me think of almost like, what if in Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, instead of having like, you find out BJ is Jewish via like all of these story elements linking back to his mother and his father, his mother being ethnically Jewish and his father being like a really abusive Christian and white nationalist. Like, imagine if that didn't exist and you just had kind of a note somewhere being like, oh yeah, remember BJ's bar mitzvah? And then that was it. And it was never addressed ever again. That's more or less how I feel about that game. And I feel like once you strip that away, and once you once you strip all that away, Prey 2017, sorry if I'm rambling here, but Prey 2017 is essentially your very bog standard kind of System Shock / BioShock kind of clone, maybe even a little bit of Deus Ex in there. And even like elements like how Prey 2006 had like all these weird weapons that maybe you wouldn't use every single one, but every one felt memorable in different ways. Like the fucking acid gun, which is like basically a shotgun, but not your like weird assault rifle that could turn into a sniper rifle with a sticky thing that would pop out of the gun and suction onto your character's eye. I don't remember a lot of weapons like that aside from like the glue gun, which was cool, and you could get like powers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jose thinks that it's unfair that I make those comparisons. I want to hear him say why.
I would like to go maybe just point by point, not necessarily be like, oh well, my opinion's right or whatever. Just more so.
Hot take. I agree with Blaine on all this. So sorry, my dude. Gonna have to.
No, that's the thing. Me and Blaine fundamentally agree on a lot of this.
So really quick, Blaine and I spoke about this. The only reason I was excited for Prey 2017 was because I was fully under the impression that it was a spiritual successor to the original Prey. Because I have odd memories of like playing the original Prey when I was incredibly too young. Because it was like that one Xbox 360 game that my babysitter's brother had that I would just play all the time because I fell in love with it, and I still love Prey. So I was fully under the impression that this new one was a spiritual successor because it had the same name. And when I played it, it wasn't that, and I got bored very, very quickly.
So I still kind of just want to go by point, just to keep it a little bit more organized. I'm in absolute agreement that having the stronger emphasis on the character's ethnicity, especially in 2006, there wasn't much representation for Native American characters. And so for the record, I have not played Prey 2006. I believe that's the year it came out. So I can't really speak on the gameplay from there. I've kind of listened to what people have thought here and there. But so yeah, I have nothing to say on that front for the original.
It's like $3.
Yeah, I just want to turn my Xbox on. Give me one moment. But as far as 2017, Prey 2017, I would disagree with the assertion that it's just kind of you didn't go with the assertion that it's just basically a full-on like a generic shooter, but I think like it goes even beyond like what Deus Ex is saying. So I would say in that regard, it's a far smarter game than the original, and that the way that there's so many variables and options that you can explore the world and accomplish objectives, it is by far one of the best immersive sims out in the market, and that's just kind of what Arcane excels at. So on a pure like gameplay front, it absolutely stands out in its own regard. As for the name, I do have a couple quotes from interviews from before the game did come out that basically just, and I think this is probably going to be like the central disagreement, and it might even be like a semantical difference. But in the interviews, I have like a big old paragraph here, but it basically distills to, we had the name, it sounded cool, they both have aliens in common, but aside from that, these are fundamentally not the same game. It's just, we like the name, so we're going to reuse it. So, like, as I said, I hadn't played the original when it came out, so I knew about like kind of like the story, the background, the whole Native American aspect, but I never had like any illusion that it was going to tie in. Like, I knew
not even.
I was very aware of the fact.
Just the fact that like I know they're saying, well, it just has the same name and they both have aliens, but otherwise, you know, we had access to the name, so we wanted to do that. But the thing is, it's one thing if like. It's one thing when, like, how, for instance, there's like 5 different horror movies all with the name House. If you count also, because like, you could say House or Hausu, whatever, but like there's that one, the Japanese one that everyone pretty much knows about. There's one that I've seen that has like 3 sequels that I've never watched. I mean, I've seen it like around. There's one, I think, literally just called House, that it's like a weird, mind-bending Michael Madsen horror movie. And this isn't, I feel like this isn't like a situation where it's like these are all different people over different spans of time that all just kind of used a very generic name for their thing and didn't have any connection. If I remember correctly, ZeniMax and then so on and so forth, Bethesda owns the rights to Prey the series. They have since they bought out id however many years ago or whatever, because it was id and 3D Realms that originally owned Prey, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, like this is, you own the property, you own the IP, you make a new game with that as your title. Not even like, and is, no matter how much you want to say, well, yeah, that's the only connection, and we just thought the name was cool. It's like, but so then come up with a different name. Because if it didn't have that name, I wouldn't be this hard on it. I wouldn't even be harping on the whole, like, why aren't you doing more with the character's ethnicity? Because I'd be like, at least there's the interesting kind of, like, the psychological test thing going on.
I think that's the point of disagreement for me, at least, though, in that, like, well, yes, I fundamentally agree using that same name is creating that little bit of confusion, but I feel like once you get past the tiny little, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a hurdle, that it's not fundamentally the same thing, I feel like it's not necessarily fair to hold that against what is ostensibly a completely separate project.
Haven't they also said in interviews that they somehow wanted to do the original Prey justice or something?
That was in the early talks. I have some like, interview here.
People seem to agree that Prey was going, like, Prey 2006 was supposed to get a sequel. Like, it was supposed to legitimately follow what happened in the original and while focus on a different character. Tommy was still in it and still played a very important role. That was
canceled long before the 2017 started development.
Still, there was a sequel happening that still had the main character of the first game in it, still in a super important role, and he still had all of his abilities from Prey 1. It was 85% done. Like, you can still go on Steam and see the achievements for it. Like, it was very close to being done, and then they cancel it, then make something completely different that has nothing to do with the original property. Just go, oh, we like this name. Our company owns this name. We'll just use this name instead of, like, attempting to bring back what they had to drop. And especially for me, when I heard that there was a new game called Prey coming out that had aliens in it that took place on a spaceship, I instantly thought that it was really, or not just related, but like a spiritual successor to the original Prey. And it's like, I get that not many people also thought that, but the chance that it wasn't just me who thought that was just like, why would you make something completely, totally out of left field that's not that, but then you name it after something that's was totally fine and great on its own, and just go, oh, we just like the name, so we just yoinked it.
I actually have a response to one of the things you brought up, Jose.
If you want to give that, and then I kind of want to defer to Corey since he seems impartial to it so far.
Oh, sorry. For those
Corey's
listening
just
and
like,
not watching, Corey is raising his hands in, I don't know, I guess. I love you, Corey. Specifically to your thing of, well, I think once you get over that, even might not call it a hurdle, that step, there's a really nice immersive sim underneath. I would agree with you when I first played it, but after, like, I mean, since I played it and put it down for the first time, and I was like, oh, this is like one of the coolest, most immersive things ever. Like you said, like, oh, the whole thing is basically a psychological test. They do we lay it out in front of you in that questionnaire in the beginning of the game, and then all of your actions are more or less parallel to those. Like, I dig stuff like that in games. The fact that its ending isn't so much that it changes depending on your choices, but like the character you are is changed by your choices and the kind of Morgan you that you play as. I dig that kind of thing in games, even if it doesn't necessarily change the ending.
Can I make a quick little posit? I wasn't necessarily invested in the story of Prey 2017. For me, it mostly, I want to say like 95% comes down to the overall game design. I think it's one of the best designed games of like the last, I don't even want to say 10 years. It's one of the best designed games, period.
Oh, okay. Because I was literally just going to be like, all that novel wears off really fast. And I never felt a desire to go back to it after that. I will agree with that. Like, the game itself is very well made. When I say it's a pretty bog standard System Shock, Bioshock-esque, like Deus Ex-esque kind of thing, I don't mean that necessarily as a complete insult. I just mean like you can see kind of where they got their inspirations, but it does play well. I had fun playing, figured it out. I didn't mind the fact that it felt weighty at all. Mm-hmm. I actually kind of dug that.
I know we were talking before the show about, I think we were talking about the System Shock 2 remake, about how it, or maybe it's the original we were talking about, where it just doesn't control well with a controller. I would say maybe even Prey 2017 is one of those where it just plays substantially better with the mouse.
Well, the only difference is when System Shock 2 came out, it was 1999. I think the only like controller controls have ever been modded in. There was never them to begin with. They just always were like, oh, people are going to play with the keyboard and a mouse, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. I think who was it in the SRG Discord? I think it was Betameister, saying about it was like maybe like their second or third playthrough. And I do think it's one of those games that substantially gets better each time you play it if you decide to spec in different ways, because there's so many different options and routes that you might not have even noticed before. I think that's just another circular way for me to say, like, I just think it's very well designed. And from what I've seen and I've heard from podcasts, I just finished listening to the Ken and Rince podcast. It's kind of like a game club. They all play the game. They talk about it. Where Prey 2006 was kind of just more of like, I don't want to like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say like it's just like a shooter of that era, but like in comparison, it basically is.
Yes, it's a straightforward shooter. The gameplay is not anything besides the fact that all the weapons were very interesting, like as designs. There wasn't much to write home about. The main strength of that story, of that game, was its story with Tommy, the narrative, and
apparently a lot of vagina doors or something.
That sounds about right.
Oh God, you just reminded me.
Wild.
Oh no.
That was a big talking point of the podcast I was listening to.
The whole game takes place on this weird orbiting, like gross organic ship.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's Giger-esque specifically, but it is definitely like.
No, it's more just like fleshy. It's more just like fleshy.
It's Cronenbergian. It's that whole bioorganics, about biomechanics shit.
And it's a super like. It's a super alien abduction from the sky story.
Yeah.
It's like you literally get like sucked up out of a bar at the beginning, like alien abduction style.
Right after you beat two white nationalist rednecks to death.
I guess at this point I kind of want to defer to Corey. What do you you think overall about this?
About the Prey series?
I guess kind of like the disagreement, I guess, like, and at least in terms of like Prey 2017 using the same name despite not having to do anything with it.
I'm literally impartial to all of this because I've never played either of those.
But you're the king. You have to make some kind of arbitrary decision to make one group feel better than the other.
My decision is to not make a decision.
Fucking liberal.
And Sarah win.
Yeah, I think that's about
Yay!
all I really have to say on it.
I should probably go. I don't hate Prey 2017. It had a lot of really fun things going for it when I
And
played
neither
it.
do I.
Keep in mind when I played it, it was when it was ridiculously hard. Even like it when I played it, it didn't have an easy. It literally got an easy mode like a year in via an update.
Oh, you know what?
So many people complained, and they're like, "Okay, we'll put it," because I think it only had like normal and hard. It didn't have an easy, so I struggled a bit through it because I'm just not good at video games.
I can definitely see that because like I want to say like even like maybe like the first 5 to like maybe even 10 hours, it totally plays like a survival horror game.
It does.
Until you start giving yourself more health, you can start increasing your gun damage. You're just running around with psychic powers, shotgunning everything in the face. It's totally fucking
So
And,
like
I
the
guess
first like 5 or so
sorry,
hours.
Sarah.
Sorry. That was my only complaint about it. I think I got around halfway through. I stopped playing when you were in the like crew quarters because they introduced this invisible enemy that was utter bullshit. That I was so pissed at that you needed like a neural mod to see it, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" Like,
You just got to swing your wrench like a mad person.
it literally just like annoyed the shit out of me. So like I stopped playing. I've been meaning to give it a second chance because it was just added to Game Pass like about a week ago, and it has the easy mode update in it. So I've been meaning to play it again because also that game's aesthetic just kind of slaps too. Like it's like a System Shock and BioShock aesthetic, and to me it's sort of like the most wearing your inspiration on your sleeve, but not in a douchey way. It's like, making it still your own thing. Because like
Art
the
Deco
one thing
inspiration is very nice in like
the one thing I remember
residential areas.
Yeah, the one thing I remember playing that game was stepping into the open lobby the first time and just being like, "Holy shit, this looks cool!" Because you have the Art Deco on your left and you have all of space on your right, and it just was like really cool, and that stood out to me. Also, the neural mods having to stab your eye. Please don't ever do that. Please don't poke your eyes.
I do want to be clear
I'm not a fan of it.
I'm not telling anyone like, oh, fuck you if you like this game. That's never my goal with these kinds of things.
Me neither. I'm never going to be that person.
I'm just that person that like when I hear someone be like, "Oh my god, it's like one of the best games ever made. It's like one of those brilliant fucking things." I'm just like, I'm glad you like it that much. I think it's kind of I played some better games in my opinion, but whatever.
To be fair to that, I'm sorry. To be fair to your points, it is absolutely one of those games where I think a decent amount of people bounce off because it just doesn't click. Like it's a little, I don't want to say obtuse, but its systems don't necessarily click right away. Like I think I bounced off like the first. It's like the first or second time I tried getting into it, I just bounced off before it made sense.
See, the funny thing for me is I didn't bounce off because like I was actually going to either like I have my PS4 copy or I was gonna download the Game Pass version, and I just to like play a little bit and refresh my memory, see if like I still felt the same way, and I just could not be bothered to even like make the effort to press download. So that was just like I guess that's my answer as far as how I still feel about that game.